I have been joined by an industry leader who has played an integral role in building the business at Akamai India across both media and non-media business for 14 long years. Prior to Akamai, he has also worked at Wipro Technologies. Ladies and gentlemen, join me in welcoming Sidharth Pisharoti, Regional Vice President, India and Southeast Asia, Akamai Technologies. Welcome to this exclusive conversation, Sidharth. We are pleased to have you with us today.
Thanks, Dimple. Thanks for having me.
So, when it comes to digital technologies, we know that digital adoption has grown manyfold, especially in the era of this pandemic. It has not only made all industries progress, but has also laid challenges, which we have, of course, tried to nudge with the help of, new age tools and technologies. The banking and financial services industry has been one of the most adaptable in terms of incorporating technology in all departments. What we are seeing today is that a good majority of BFSI companies are either already digital first or in rapid digitization mode. At Akamai, you work with several financial services entities across the globe and in India. What are some of the key trends, that you have noticed in the financial sector?
Right, and look, I'll start with the last part that you mentioned. Right? At Akamai, we are an integral part of the digital ecosystem. We work with the largest companies across the world, and that includes the largest financial institutions and companies across the globe and in India. Keeping their apps and experiences closer to the users and keeping threats and cyber crimes as far as we can from these customers. And the pandemic obviously has resulted in a rapid adoption of digital payments here in India. And it was like a perfect storm. What happened during the pandemic, we went into lockdowns, the physical institutions were shut down, folks were initially forced to use digital. And when consumers figured out how easy it was to use, it was then just an explosion, right? And what came with that was a big impulsive rise in adoption, and it became like a perfect marriage between the financial institutions and the fintech companies. And they continued to collaborate, and this collaboration has only empowered consumers and also empowered the industry. But having said that, as users and adoption increased due to the pandemic, so did the cybersecurity challenges that increased, right? Clearly, if you look at the financial sector, it is the most lucrative sector for cyber criminals or hackers, simply because it involves money, right? And
right.
And that, as we saw user adoption increasing, as we saw the emergence of fintech as a strong digital player or a digital industry, we also saw cybersecurity becoming a prominent challenge for all these companies. And if you look at, and we have our own, state of the internet reports that we publish. And if you look at our most recent report that we published in 2020, we had about 193 billion credential stuffing attacks globally. And that was a 45% increase year over year, right? That's the increase we saw due to the pandemic. And similarly, if you look at web application attacks, we saw about 6.3 billion attacks in 2020, which was a 62% increase year over year. So clearly, yes, adoption has increased. Fintech companies are really enjoying, this increased adoption and increase in user base, but at the same time, the threats are increasing from our vantage point.
Right, right. You mentioned that threats and cyber crimes have risen to a great extent because of user adoption increasing. So data is something that has also increased over the past 1.5 years. We have immense data collected with us today, and as they say, data is the new currency, and financial services companies house personal information, financial data, and of course, the history of all users. What are some of the threats, that financial institutions face today, and how can they counter these threats successfully?
Yeah, and I'll start with some data point itself, right? On data being the new currency. If you look at the cost of cyber crime, like, and when I say cost of cyber crime, it's the cost that companies will have to invest in protecting against cyber crime. That's rising at a cost of about 15% year over year, right? If you look at reports that companies across the globe will have to spend about $10.5 trillion by 2025 to protect against cybercrime. And that's the scale at which the cost of cybercrime is increasing.
Mm-hmm.
And as I said, financial companies are the top choice for attackers. And that's the financial motivation between such attacks. And, what does this mean for us, right? At Akamai, we see cyber threats growing in volume and growing not just in volume in one kind of attack vector, but in variety of threat vectors. And it's very different. And with the pandemic, proving to be a catalyst for this enormous digital growth, what's happening also for companies is that their go-to-market timelines have shrunk. So what product they could have brought to market, let's say in a year, today they've been asked to bring to market in 1 month or 2 months. So all of a sudden what happens is product and capability of the product becomes a critical criteria, whereas cybersecurity may not be a big priority or a focus area, and sometimes gets deprioritized because they got to get a product into the market.
Right.
And that opens up areas where cyber criminals can leverage and try to attack these apps or these websites. And as these attacks are increasing and the threats are evolving, industry has to keep pace. There is no other option, right? I mean, we as an industry, we have to keep pace with this, and we need to bring in security products and practices to mitigate these threats. And we have to move away from traditional practices of just infrastructure based or a central security based architecture to a edge security based architecture, a cloud security based architecture, and also move to a zero trust framework that applies a consistent layer of security, enabling protection against different threat vectors, because it's not just one threat vector that you're fighting against or you're protecting against. We have seen that legacy architectures tend to be static. They don't evolve as these threat landscape evolves, and that provides a single point of failure for a lot of companies. Whereas with an Akamai edge security architecture, it continues to evolve with the landscape evolving and provides an end-to-end security. So that's how we kind of look at it. Some additional data, also to consider is that, interestingly, India featured among the top 3 countries globally that face these attacks, right? So India is no longer one of those countries which, the cybercrime is not that high. It is very high. It's number 3 globally. And some more recent data to look at, this year in Q1, in Q1, we mitigated almost 1900 plus DDoS attacks, right? That's the kind of scale that our network has. Almost 63 billion credential abuse attacks were identified by us in Q1. And over 2 billion web application firewall alerts were triggered in Q1 of 2021. And this was a 70% jump year over year. So again, 19 to 20, we saw a significant jump, but 20 to 21, again, we're seeing a significant jump on an already high baseline. So the threat landscape is dramatically changing, and Akamai is doing its best to kind of keep up with it and also overpower some of these threats for our customers.
Right, right. So, as you mentioned, we have to move away from the digital, from the traditional practices, and of course, security and product has to go hand in hand. So, as consumers, we all have come to expect every transaction on the internet to happen in a matter of seconds. And given that digital inclusion for every individual is a key aspect for the financial services sector, what role does Akamai play in encouraging, increased digital adoption and addressing the demand for this last mile digital connectivity?
Right. Look, as we saw exponential increase in the traffic in the last 18 months, especially during lockdowns and after lockdowns as well, as you rightly pointed out, what has changed is the expectations from end users, right? What somebody was willing to wait for, let's say 4 seconds for a page to load, or 3 seconds for a page to load. Today, it's probably 1 second or less, right? So the expectation has gone dramatically different from where it was, even frankly, 18 months ago.
Mm-hmm.
And also the digital adoption, right? In India, if you look at the way we are going in the next 3 to 4 years, we're going to have almost 900 million active internet users, and that's going to change the entire landscape for us, and it is changing as we are as we are talking. And given the users expect a seamless and secure experience, regardless of the device they come from, regardless of the location they come from, or frankly regardless of the channel they are interacting in, whether it's an application, whether it's a website, they
Mm-hmm.
expect a seamless uh, in a seamless experience.
Experience, right?
And that's where Akamai comes in. While
Mm-hmm.
competing platforms say that it's enough to be in the same region or same country as your users,
Mm-hmm.
Akamai believes in a philosophy of being only one hop away from 90% of the internet users across the world. And what that means is that we are reducing the number of hops to basically just one for most part of the users when they're
Mm-hmm.
trying to access an application or a, or a website on the internet. And in India alone, how we're doing that is with our massive network and the massive investment we've made in the country. With over 300 points of presence, we have about 18,000 servers across 49 cities. And most recently, we served a peak traffic of 13 terabits per second. And so that's the kind of scale at which we are operating at. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what gives the real experience and seamless experience for our customers, consumers in the last mile, and hence our customers are able to serve their end customers or end consumers, leveraging the power of this platform and provide that consistent experience.
All right. So today, as part of the financial ecosystem, every financial institution needs to deal with a larger number of interfaces with other platforms, like be it media, commerce, medical, government, edtech, and many other platforms. The list of integrations is just expanding. What do you see as the pros and the cons of these unprecedented connections happening in the ecosystem?
Absolutely. I mean, that's a very good point that you hit upon. Every fintech company today works in a close-knit ecosystem of other digital players, right? I mean, it includes social media, e-commerce, banks. There are other partners. So they have to interface with all these partners. And all of these interfaces are connected either via apps or APIs, right?
Hmm.
And these connections are only growing by the day. They're not coming down. You keep
Right.
adding a new partner, you keep increasing the number of APIs.
Hmm.
Now, while every app may have multiple layers of complexity, the average expectation of users in terms of use and navigation is directly proportional to the complexity of the app. And that's the irony of it. The more easy you want to make it for your end users, the more complexity you need to deal with at your end, at the back end,
Right.
right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And that is where we're seeing a lot of third-party integrations. We're seeing fourth-party integrations and even farther layers that are impacting the performance of these apps and also opening up potential threat vectors into these apps. So it becomes imperative for organizations to kind of take a holistic approach to their architecture, right, to their security architecture, rather than stitching together heterogeneous point solutions. So it's not just about going by segment and putting some security around it. You got to look at the holistic thing end to end and say, okay, how do I look at what is my security posture and how do I look at my security? And so as these APIs are increasing and the adoption is growing significantly, um, they become also the preferred choice of attack
Hmm.
for the cyber criminals. Our research indicates that these APIs are targeted 4 times more than traditional web applications. And we have, again, our approach towards security has always been looking at a holistic approach, right?
Hmm.
Looking at
Hmm.
where all there could be threat vectors, and then providing a complete solution end to end for that using our cloud-based architecture. And that's what we recommend our customers to take a look at and implement, right?
Right, right. So you said following a holistic approach was very important and look from end to end, and that's what you've been providing complete solutions for. And of course, I second that as well. Uh, so Not only do financial institutions have to scale and secure their digital platforms, they also need a skilled pool of resources, to manage the platforms on ongoing basis. As a global technology leader, what are some of the ways Akamai can help in this regard?
Like today, every financial institution or fintech company is a technology first company, right? And hence they all require skilled resources to manage their platforms. And we see the industry evolving towards a kind of an hybrid and collaborative model. Not, so yes, there's a lot of in-house specialists, but also a lot of dependency on partners and specialization. And relying on partners, there are a couple of reasons why that is happening more and more, and this is a trend we see in the industry. Because one, there is a skill set deficiency, right? I mean, it is a specialized skill as far as, especially around cybersecurity, and the number of available resources are always less, and there is a large gap in the cybersecurity expertise as far as skilled resources are concerned, and
Right.
hence you need to depend on partners as well. The second is that the cybersecurity landscape itself is evolving, as we discussed, right? In terms of volume, in terms of variety, in terms of complexity. We're seeing that it evolves by the day, by the week, by the month, and hence in keeping track of these threats and keeping pace with these threats requires maintaining a constant security threat posture, and it requires special attention. And this is where partners like Akamai come in and complement the financial sector, right? With our own threat intelligence that we have, and the resources we have, right? I mean, we have one of the largest pools of cybersecurity talent and expertise in the industry today. We also offer services such as threat intelligence, SOC, which is our security operations command center, managed security services, and so on. And this only complements their in-house expertise. So it's not like a competing service or solution, but it's more like complementing customers what they have in-house. And we are able to do this at scale, and that's simply because we have the visibility into the traffic on the internet at a global level. That's the scale of the platform we have, and hence we are able to provide that to our customers.
Right. So you mentioned that the industry is moving towards a more hybrid and collaborative model, and you also mentioned about the talent and expertise that you have at your organization. My last question would be on remote working that we've been witnessing for the past couple of months now. Remote working is something that will mostly stay in the form of either work from home scenario or a hybrid. We will adapt ourselves to a hybrid culture. So, and we have gradually gotten used to it. What are some of the best, practices to keep in mind in order to secure today's digital workforce or a hybrid workforce in the near future?
Right. I mean, that we are over the crisis mode of 2020, right? Where IT leaders world over went into a crisis management situation, but IT and security leaders now need to approach this, as you rightly pointed out, as a hybrid workspace model, right? As employees begin to kind of return to the office and start traveling again and continue to work remotely, it's vital to maintain the same level of security, risk, and end user experience, regardless of where the point of access is. And creating a location agnostic security stance that remains agile and frictionless is the end goal. And it composes of vital foundations which allow secure remote application access for all the employees. And I think we're moving to a world where we move away from VPN, the traditional VPN technology, to a zero trust model, right? And in the zero trust model, it's also not only about the new applications and managing the new agile applications, but also providing access to legacy on-premise applications that will still continue to exist in the new world. And I think we all know and appreciate the concept of zero trust. It's the approach to zero trust that is critical, not just the technology behind it, right? When we say zero trust model, we have to follow that in all senses, which is don't trust anybody, right? Because the perimeter now is no longer your office or just people connecting from your office. The perimeter now is there is no end to it. It's infinite. It's people traveling, it's people's phones, it's people's home networks, and that is what you need to secure. And what the framework does is that it dictates that only authenticated and authorized users and devices can kind of access your application and data. And I think that's the future, right? That makes sure that the applications are never exposed. And
Mhm.
at the same time, it protects those applications and users from advanced threats on the internet as well. So it works both ways. It protects your apps and infrastructure, but it also protects your employees and your partners who are connecting to your applications. So we feel that organizations need to reduce the attack surface by architecting their platforms, and also architecting it in such a way that they're authenticating at level 7 instead of level 4. And again, one needs to consider the holistic and comprehensive approach rather than stitching point solutions, because point solutions always means that there is a single point of failure, and
Right.
it can fail. So
Mhm.
it requires a holistic approach, just like everything else that we spoke about.
Right, right, right. So it is vital to maintain security and end user experience no matter where you're working from. That's a very important point I think you mentioned right now. And with that, we come to an end of this conversation. Thank you for joining us, Sidharth, today. You have enlightened us, and of course, all the viewers who are watching this episode with some really interesting and some fascinating insights. There is so much to take away from this conversation with you today. Thank you for interacting with us today and have a nice day. Thank you.